Hello, my name is Michaela O'Connor Abrams, founder of Mocha Plus. Welcome to our Collective Conscience series. We created this series for you to bring together great minds from around the world on myriad topics that we hope will expand your mind, will challenge your current beliefs, and give you an opportunity to be inspired with every video. Enjoy.
Hello to everyone. It is always such a pleasure to see your faces fill the screen. New ones and ones we've had here before. Welcome back. I'm Shelley Tatum Kieran, partner at Mocha Plus, and this is our 5th Collective Conscience Salon, our 4th on Zoom. And Michaela and I are really finding that this platform is so perfect for our goals with Collective Conscience, which was to bring people together from different perspectives, different backgrounds, different points of view, and have everyone come together on a Monday night and listen to one another and walk away with something that they hadn't expected or hadn't thought about, and continued hopefully to jumpstart your week. So without further ado, I will throw it over to Michaela, but thank you for joining us, and we'll talk to you later.
Thank you, Shelley. Well, it is in fact a lot of fun to do this. Something that was out of necessity due to our shelter in place really turned out to be the platform that was meant to be. So it's great fun to bring people together weekly for this 1 hour and hopefully leave you with new ideas, new perspectives, perhaps a new approach, but mostly to just know that we are curating the world of being connected by design. That all of the speakers that you have seen thus far, and I hope that many of you are returning and just have this on your calendar at 6 p.m. every Monday night to kick off the week. They are each bringing you a perspective, but you will find, and those of you who have not been able to join us, we are putting this all together on a YouTube channel, so stay tuned, you'll be able to see them all. But they all actually are pretty inextricably linked when it comes to perspective and, again, thoughts and ideas about ways in which we approach life. Now, our guest tonight is a dear friend and colleague, Anthea Stratigos. She came to me about 12 years ago when I was CEO of Dwell and introduced herself, and I already knew of Outsell, an incredible B2B research platform, and she had been in the industry for some time before she founded the company with her husband, and was talking to me about what they do and how they do it and how Dwell would benefit, and it went from there. The friendship blossomed. Outsell became very much a part of the Dwell life. And then right somewhere about 5 years into it, I started hearing about this book that she was writing. And the next year I'd hear about the book she was writing. And the next year I'd hear about the book she was writing. I'm like, okay, Anthea, are we going to have this book? Because I'm loving everything you're saying and we need this book. So fast forward to February 2020, and Magic in the Mundane appears. Now, I am assuming most of you, if not all of you, have not had an opportunity to buy the book or borrow someone's copy and read it since it's just out. But I will tell you, and Anthea, this is my first part of the intro to you, it's really uncanny. This book is so prescient for the times in which we live. I mean, hard to believe that these 11 principles that you put into the table of contents and then parse by many of the things we're going to talk about tonight, so I don't want to do the whole spoiler, are so appropriate for life in general, but for right now, as I went back to these chapters preparing for this evening, I thought it's almost like she knew. I mean, the whole chapter on like getting dressed in the morning. Who isn't like keeping their sweats on the bottom? Nobody's going to see what I have on my bottom or any other place below the waist. But I mean, it's amazing. So first of all, welcome. Thank you so much, Anthea, for spending your evening with us. And you know, it was 10 years in the making. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's fair. It's great to be here. Thank you, Michaela. Thank you.
Pleasure. Yeah. And so what actually brought it to the culmination of, okay, I'm done. We're going to the publisher. This is it. How did there end up just being 11 and not 12 or 13? Where did you know you reached the point at which the magic and the mundane had been well enough supported and illustrated that you were ready to actually say, hit the press?
Well, there's nothing like peer pressure to keep something happening. And how many times could I see you and say, I'm writing this book, I'm writing this book. So it was at a group of women that were getting together every year in Telluride, of which Michaela is one. And when we first joined, it was 10 years ago, and I talked about this book. And it was soon going to be the 10th anniversary of these women getting together every year. And I vowed that on the 10th year, I was not going to go back and talk about this book anymore. I would actually present it. So I had a deadline in my mind that I was not going to go back to Telluride and not have this project complete. So that was number one. Peer pressure can always do a lot for accountability, I guess. But I think really more it was, I had come through a pretty tough period. I stopped writing for a couple of years when my brother was very sick. I talk about that a little bit in the book. And I felt like the creative juices were coming back together again, and that I could see it through. So I just finally decided it was time. And somehow the 70 essays felt right. It was just more a feeling, and that's what I went with.
Okay. Well, I want to dive into it because when you gave me this galley that day in the car, when you were so kind to drive me to the airport so I could leave my car in your driveway conveniently, I got on the plane, and as I went through the galley, I thought, okay, oh, this is me. Oh, this is, and I, as you remember, sent you that email from New York saying, this is incredible. What seems like common sense was an aha moment almost every time. So since we know that most people on our Collective Conscious Salon tonight do not have the book, Anthea, and haven't read it, give us the Reader's Digest version from your inspiration so everybody understands why this is going to be a wonderful thing to keep by your bed or at your desk or any place else where you just decide to open it in the middle for inspiration. So take us through that inspiration.
Well, you know, life happens in vignettes, right? A series of them every day, every minute, every moment. And when I started the book, it was built off the back of a memo that I wrote in 2001 to a staff that was going through the .com bust. Technology was, you know, starting to roar, and there were a lot of stresses. And I wrote a memo called Thriving Tips, and that was actually the genesis of the book because these tips resonated, and I heard from staff that they made a difference. And so it was from that experience of just writing these little blurbs into this memo that I started to kind of collect stories. And as I started to collect them, I would just write. I would sit down sometimes on a Sunday. I wasn't quite sure how the book was going to take place. And I somewhat let the process unfold. And then finally, I just started to commit these. I had the picture that I was going to commit them to short form essays that all had a common focus on taking life's little vignettes and turning them into stories about how the littlest things, the simplest things, the mundane, can actually turn into life's extraordinary. I think the thing that came to me was somebody saying, well, you know, your life isn't ordinary. And I think about it and I think, well, I came from very ordinary means. I came from very, very simple background. And I ended up creating a life that's pretty magical. And so I think I sat down and wanted to dissect that so that I could pay it forward to the next generation. It's, you know, how many years later from the .com bust, we're now we've had 2 recessions since, now we're in another big one. And I felt that you could really take life's simplest things and turn them into magic. And that was, if I looked back on my life, it was really a series of choices and an ability to kind of look back and say, how can you take the littlest things and make magic out of them? It sounds a little, I don't know how to explain it. I don't know how to explain it, Michaela. Sometimes it's hard for me to kind of talk about myself, even though I wrote about myself through this book. But I came from a very simple background. I, went to college. I was the only one of my siblings that went to college. I had a very successful career. I married, remarried, had kids from a blended family, raised 4 beautiful kids with my husband, my ex-husband, and had this beautiful company, have a wonderful life. And I felt like I wanted to pay it forward. I wanted to, the next generation of men and women are dealing with a lot of complexity, a lot of technology, a world that is filled with quite a bit of dissension at a time when we just need some better things to be thinking about. So I just decided to put these comments down in words. I don't really have another way to say it.
Well, I think that says a lot. It's Shelley, not Michaela. You may have noticed that beautiful bright pink light just left the screen, and I got a text saying her computer had crashed. But she'll be back. We all know she'll be back better than ever. But just to expand on that a little bit, I think it's interesting right now that or at least it feels to me that we're living in a chapter. We look at this period of time as a chapter, at least I do, and this will end eventually, but really the key might be in just going moment by moment, day by day. And are there any strategies that you use to try to live in the moment?
Boy, strategies to live in the moment. Well, it's easy to not live in the moment, right? It's easy to think about what's ahead. When are we going to be able to leave our homes? Under what circumstances? And at some point I wrote a piece in there about stop worrying, because it's energy that's not well spent, right? It's just energy that is almost like the hamster wheel of all the things that could go on, active minds, right? So I think it's about mindfulness, being purposeful, thinking about what can I do in the moment? Because we can't control what's going on out there. There is so much that's so beyond us. We have to make our own individual choices about what's right for us. And think about what's here in front of me that I can do. One of the things that Michaela asked earlier about the book, and
she's back. She's back, by the way.
She's back. I learned a long time ago, sometimes the hard way, about the alchemy of choices. And I think that choices are actually one of the most empowering things that every person on the planet has. And so in the moment, we have a choice. Are we going to react with fear? Are we going to try and stay present? Are we going to trust the universe and know that it'll all play out? Are we, there's always a sense of in the momentness, I guess, of just how do you just stay present here?
Well, if I can use that to pick up on, it was absolutely trying not to react and be afraid. And as the computer crashed, to going to another computer to bring this up. So thank you for your patience. And Shelley, thank you for running interference here. So I'm assuming, since I was only gone for, it appears to be 1 minute and 50 seconds. Anthea, what I want to go to is the whole idea about slowing down to speed up. Mm-hmm. And as we were talking about this earlier, it's although it is just a phrase in this amazing book of these 11 principles, mm-hmm. I go back to that a lot because I do keep this with me. And when I was traveling, I would travel with it, and now it's by my bed and I'll pick up another chapter and look, but I always go back to that, because the whole idea about really being able to slow down enough to get more things done that are meaningful is something that you've posited there. And it's really resident in all of the essays, right? Mm-hmm. So what have been some of the ways in which you were able to slow it all down in order actually to make a great deal more progress and be more productive?
Well, I think I learned that lesson the hard way. As a leader of a company and as an entrepreneur, you kind of see, you want to get things done. And so you're always racing ahead. And a leader's job is to be able to manage that tempo of being out ahead, but bring people with them. And so there were times in Outsell where I would be moving too fast, wouldn't allow the organization to actually bed down, get traction, keep things, engaged in a way where we could actually see the future and then execute. And we'd have this pattern that I would call skim surfing, where I would skim through the surface of something and not really bed down enough to really make sure that the organization could get things done. And then I wasn't always tracking why things weren't happening at the pace that I wanted them to, or the way that I thought they might evolve. So for me, it was a leadership lesson. And my colleagues would also help me to kind of pace myself. There was a very close friend who worked with me that talked about the geese when they fly, and how the lead goose is always out in front, and when they're going too fast, somebody's honking, and then when they need to replace one another, the lead goose will go back and someone else will take the lead. And she was saying that sometimes we're honking at you, Anthea. We need you to hold back. So we came up, I'm not sure how I even remember where the phrase came from, but that notion of slowing down to speed up, to take a breath, to make sure we were clear in what we wanted, to set the intention, to get clarity, click clear with people, to make sure that we were all engaged in the same premise, and then give people the opportunity to go execute. And so it was really a management discipline at the beginning, and then it became a tenet for life.
Well, I mean, you know, truly, call it the universe, the virus, I mean, push the pause button.
Big time.
And has forced all of us to slow down, somewhat painfully, which, considering what's going on, is kind of a luxurious problem, right? But nevertheless, I think what we're seeing, right, is so much good that's coming out in what is certainly a tragic situation, but the good coming out is amazing. And I was thinking about, as I was reading some of the wonderful things that are actually surfacing, and I was thinking about slow down in order to speed up, that if we're really smart collectively, right, and have a consciousness about this opportunity that COVID has given us, if you will, then we really can make so many things so much better and be more purposeful and more productive. Yeah. So again, you know, everything I'm going to actually bring out about the book, I think everybody is going to hear how prescient it is given our time. But even when this is over, and it will be, all of these principles, I have found anyway, are so, so helpful in just making a calmer, you know, more peaceful, more productive, just happier existence on the days. So I also, though, want to talk about a piece that in the book about compromise. Mm-hmm. And this is the one that, unlike every other one, though I was nodding my head like, of course it is, absolutely, blinding glimpse of the obvious, Michaela, why didn't you see it? I got to compromise, and how you position compromise as, actually, that's not a great thing. So share with the group why you don't think compromise is really the answer, and why you can actually get to a win-win-win, as you put it in the book.
Well, I speak of a coach that I was very instrumental in my life, a mother figure in many respects. Her name was Angela Thoburn. And I went to one of her workshops, and she painted the picture of compromise versus win-win-win. And it stuck with me, and it actually became a philosophy of life for me and the way we run the company. And I think the way we do life as a family, and my marriage with my husband. So Angie posited that when you are in a compromise, you're basically trading turns, winning and losing. Somebody wins, somebody loses, somebody else wins, take turns. This time I'll do it, next time you do it. And it's a series of win-losing, win-loss. Maybe you're okay with it, you've settled. Her thinking, and she used this illustration in the concept of a marriage, is that at any point in time, you have to have the integrity of the partner one, partner two, husband, wife, wife, whatever your combination of partner is, but that you have to have the integrity of the individuals, and you have to hold the integrity of the marriage. And at all points in time, you want to have all three of those stay intact. And that's the mechanism for decision making. So at work, it was a tenet that our employees for 20 years could always have. We had unlimited sick and vacation time. The notion was win-win-win. Take care of your family, back yourself up so the clients can take care of, can be taken care of, take care of the company. So we use that as a philosophy at Outsell in decision making. What does win-win-win look like? How do you stay whole? How does the client stay whole? How does the company stay whole? In our family, it would be, if we're going on vacation, we would sit down and have a family meeting before a vacation. What do you want to do, Mark? What do you want to do, Gregory? What do you want to do, Jeff? What do you want to do, Melissa? And everybody would put something out. Greg and I would have what we called our conditions of satisfaction, and then we'd figure out what we were going to do. So it's really about taking that extra time to make sure that everybody's needs are getting met. But it also means that people have to understand their needs and be responsible for articulating them. And it's both ways.
Got it.
Everybody wins.
I think we could say that, running the different countries, that might be a new way to think of things and get to some agreement. So the other one that I really found, I guess, so important for people to understand was the part about caring about yourself, taking care of yourself, knowing when to agree, knowing when to speak up. You talk about that a lot, about, there are times when you might keep your opinion to yourself, but isn't it more important to really be able to speak up and not be silenced, either by a fear of being judged or not being smart enough or whatever it is, but to just be confident enough in your voice. And I would say if we took a poll, and we should be able to do that on Zoom here, but I won't do it tonight for fear this computer dies again, is that there are a lot of people who, if they were honest, would say there are plenty of times that I don't ask for what I need, that I don't speak up, just to say, that's not my opinion, and I'd like to be heard. So talk a little bit about that, about when you got your voice, and that was such a poignant part in the beginning of this book, and I would say it became a great deal of the groundwork and foundation for the rest of the essays. Fair?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Well, if you think about it, I think most people, or many people, are raised in an environment where you can't say your truth, right? You get in trouble. How dare you? Why'd you say that? I was raised in an environment where you didn't ask a lot of questions. And if you did, you could get into trouble. And so I learned at an early age that you just didn't speak up. It was easier to kind of, I wasn't in an abusive household or anything like that, but my dad was a disciplinarian. My mom was the one that kept the house running, and you kind of knew when you had gone too far. So I had gotten the how dare you more than once in my life. And after a while you learn. What I realized, though, that it was a learned behavior not to speak up. And I was treating my personal life different from my professional life. And so at one point I was seeing where I was on fire from a career standpoint. I could speak up, I could get what I want. And then I was feeling sometimes helpless in my personal life, and it wasn't congruent. And so I worked through that. I worked through that with a therapist. I worked through that with a coach, and really realized that if you're not speaking up for what you want or what you need, going back to that concept of win-win-win, you're not in integrity with yourself. And so you have to be in integrity with yourself to be able to say what you need, what you want, help somebody else get what they want, do your best. You're ultimately not responsible for somebody else getting what their needs met, but creating that kind of environment. So I think it came home to roost self-reflectively when I was probably even a few years back. And somebody was talking to me about when my mom was sick with cancer. And the family wouldn't talk about it, couldn't talk about it. When her cancer, she had died of breast cancer eventually, but what happened is when she came through it the first time, she was so, had gone through it so well that it was just not in the family, it just wasn't in the family dialogue. And when she was sick again, nobody wanted to bring it up. And I realized many, many years later how that was stifling my voice to not be able to talk even with my mom about her dying, or my siblings, and until after. Even her friends didn't know she was dying. And I realized how awful to keep such a secret that even some of her closest friends couldn't say goodbye to her. And it was something where I realized I just didn't want to do life that way.
Well, and this is one of the things on the harder topics that you and I shared, right, early on, because we met right before my mother passed, and exactly the same way was not going to discuss it. Nobody knew, as I made those calls to people to say that she'd passed, at least 3 people were, God damn you, Lisa O'Connor, why didn't you let me know, let me help, let me say something? But it was not to be discussed.
Yep.
So there is something to that. And I think most people would say that I am not lacking for opinion or voice pretty robustly.
Yeah.
But the truth of the matter is that that did not happen all at once. And I can still think of examples of times in not the distant past that I most definitely would have served myself and perhaps everybody else around me better had I just said what I was really thinking. Again, respectfully, kindly, generously, but been direct about it. So let's go to the part of the book, and then I want to be able to open the floor for questions. But let's go to the part of the book where you're talking about the people that you build. You build a team of people. Mm-hmm. Because while you definitely were putting these moments together and these essays and these, I will call them realizations, not revelations, but realizations of what each of these things meant. I talk about connecting the dots. By design, you realized all these things mattered to who you were and who you were going to be through this kind of awareness, right? Mm-hmm. But I think the team you built is fascinating. And I'd like you to share that with everybody in the salon.
So the team starts with your immediate family, right? My husband is part of my team. My family is part of my team. My coworkers are a different part of my team. My sister is another part. My girlfriends, I think girlfriends are really important. And then I also think it's really important to have a team of what I call caregivers, people who help you, right? So if you can afford it, a massage therapist. I go to acupuncture because I have been dealing with a thyroid condition that I decided I wanted to do the best I could holistically. And a doctor of integrative medicine, a woman who has done work with medical energy. So a chiropractor, right? So there is a team of people who are your, the people who help nurture you to stay well and to stay healthy. The people that maybe give you a manicure or a pedicure. I think they're all part of your team. And these people are here to help you be who you are, be who they are. And so I think of a team in a big way, starting with family and out to anybody who supports you, right? And I've realized sometimes when relationships, even something like who's helping you with your home, if they're no longer able to support you the way that you need as you change, sometimes your team members change, right? I think teams are organic, just like anything else.
Okay, so the number of people that you built in the caregiver realm, right, were important. But what I have experienced with you as a friend and colleague is that you are always present. I mean, you never fail to call me and say, "Hey, haven't talked in a while. Let's get on that call. How are you doing? What happened with?" And you remember what it was we talked about 2 weeks prior and check in with me. And that I've always remarked that that is a quality about you that I think I'm going to believe comes out of how you were able to write this book and how present you are because of the work you did, because of these realizations and connecting these pieces. So I just wanted to tell you in front of the whole salon how much I appreciate that in you. And I think that once I read the book, I thought, oh, okay, this is the work. These are the kinds of things that you've done to get to a place where you can just do that. And you know so many people and you manage so many people to so have a memory like that to come back to something I think is remarkable. You posit, of course, in the book, and especially at the end, invite people, not only by the book, but to join the community. And I think that's really important because regardless of the times in which we are currently living, the idea of sharing these moments, because everybody's magic and how mundane that is and where that emanates in each person's life is important, and in the relationship to others, magic in that mundane, I think, is really powerful. So what, I mean, the book has just come out, so people are just finding out about the community. What kind of feedback and participation are you getting? Can you share with us kind of some of the things that you've seen?
Thank you. Communities forming. I felt like it was important that my mundane and how I turn the mundane into the magic is something that anybody can do every single day in very many different ways. And I thought it would be inspiring to have people share how they make magic out of the mundane. I have 70 essays on that topic, from sitting in every chair to stop worrying, to speak up, to all kinds of things, picking weeds. And different people find therapy in different ways, whether it's taking the dogs for a walk or going bird watching. And so I felt like, especially in an environment, I didn't know that we'd be sitting in sheltering in place, but it was an opportunity for people to share their stories and how they make magic. And I just felt the world needs more magic. And I'm not the only creator of it, but I wanted to inspire people to share it. So, did we lose Michaela again? I think I lost her.
Oh, it looks like we did.
We did. She asked me when, there she is. I don't know if you, so, the other thing I was gonna, the interesting thing too, that I was, so I don't think I mentioned this to you earlier, Michaela. The thing that surprised me about the book is its resonance with men of all ages. I was surprised by that. I don't know why I was surprised, because I didn't really write it for one sex or the other, but the feedback I'm getting from men about how they can stop and think about how they create magic in their days, and their families, and their lives, was really interesting. We lost, I think you're on mute.
I'll unmute her.
I think we're having too many
good.
for Michaela Abrams on the account is what it's telling me. Sorry. So people called me saying, oh, I'm so excited about your next speaker, and I want to get the book, and maybe I won't be able to do it in time for the speaker, but do you think that this is appropriate for men? And I thought it was so interesting that I never even thought about that. Like, why wouldn't magic in the mundane be, for anybody, right? Literally anybody. How does this feel female? And the two people said to me, I don't know. I think that men aren't as comfortable talking about magic and talking about ways in which magic from the mundane, maybe it feels, and I thought that was interesting, because it never ever struck me that this was something that was only, discoverable or worth discovering for women. So I'm glad you brought that up. So what I'd like to do, Shelley, do we have questions right now for people raising their hand?
Well, we did, and it looks like that question was answered I answered it in the comments, and I apologize before at the beginning, I didn't run through the question and answer period and how it works. Of course, you raise your hand by going into the participants icon at the bottom of your screen, and you can click on the hand, and then I'll see you, and I'll unmute you, and you can ask Anthea. And we do not have it. The only question we had in the comments was where to buy your book.
And you did let everybody know it's that Anthea S, because that's also where you join the community and share with Anthea your own magic in the mundane. And I really, I'd love to see this build, because I think there's so much that we can learn from each other by sharing these things. And as people get the book, and what's wonderful for everybody on the book is that there is a workbook-like feeling to this in the essays and the chapters to make your own notes. I have found it such a great guidebook, if you will. And the things that seem mundane, I mean, the title is pretty clear, really aren't. They really aren't. They are really moments that the reason I think they're mundane is because we don't necessarily pay attention to them like we should, that we don't have the intention around them. So unless there's a burning question, I want to go to what we're really calling a get to know the speaker a little bit better by doing a lightning round of 5 things that I think you should know about Anthea that aren't in the book, and so only you will know. So you can just, of course, this is rapid fire, Anthea, so you can embellish as much as you like, but shaken or stirred?
Shaken. Definitely shaken.
I simply have to take it further and have you tell everybody what that fabulous cocktail is that you and I share, because now I'm drinking it. And most of the time it's dinner, sometimes lately it's lunch, but go ahead.
So half Mandarin vodka, usually Absolute or Grey Goose, half regular vodka, and a splash of cranberry, actually a dash of cranberry. Too much cranberry wrecks it. So you want just like this very, very blush pink, shaken, served up.
And I mean, I think that's been its own fun little vignette of ours, because I have watched when a bartender has done it perfectly, almost with an eyedropper. And then I've seen when it's come and it's almost red and you're saying, I'm sorry, I do mean a drop, please. And it goes back. Okay. Mountains or ocean?
Ocean. I love the water.
Planning or spontaneity?
Spontaneity. Always.
Modern or traditional?
More modern, more modern. I have a little thread of traditional that runs through, but most definitely more modern.
Okay. Romance or thrillers?
Ooh. I don't know. Probably romance if I had to pick.
Okay, great. And then as I was asking you to, help me put together anything I might be forgetting, you told me something that I did not know after 13 odd years of knowing you, and that is that you can write backwards and upside down.
Yes.
Okay, and when did you discover this amazing talent?
Well, when I first learned to write, I wrote backwards. So I'd write A-N-T-H and I'd go this way. And my parents thought I was dyslexic. I was left-handed. They weren't sure what they were dealing with. So that was the very earliest. But then it always stuck with me. And I was telling Michaela the story earlier of being in social studies, senior year of high school, age 17. The assignment was to deliver the project in an unusual format, presented in a different format. So I wrote the entire essay that I was due in cursive backwards, and my professor had to grade it in the mirror. So it's always stuck with me. I can do upside down, backwards. It's just weird. So it's just kind of how the brain works.
I love it. Well, like our previous collective conscience speakers, I really love this medium, but I look forward to the time when we can gather everybody on this Zoom in person to meet you and to have a workshop together around magic and the mundane, giving everybody a chance to get the book, to read it, and then to be a part of the community, sharing with you their own magic in the mundane moments. We do have some questions. I see Lisette Fernandez has a question. So you want to unmute her?
Hi. First of all, thank you so much. This is awesome, and I'm absolutely dying to read the book. So I will be getting that for myself and my girlfriend Posse as well. It's perfect time to read it, and like you said, to maybe apply some of these principles. I was just curious, when you were, because it took you a while to kind of pull it all together, I would imagine there were things that you chose not to include in the book. And after this was published, I'm wondering, is there anything that you left out deliberately that you wish now that you had put in, or are you really just kind of like, yes, this is what I meant to say, and there's nothing else that I wish I had added?
The only chapter that I wish I had written was one about sleeping. I talk about sleeping in certain little vignettes, but actually I've always slept 8 or 9 hours a night forever. And luckily I was blessed with 2 babies who helped support, that need. So both my babies were great sleepers, but really I think getting sleep is another important part of self-nurturing and is hard for a lot of women to do. I think it's hard for a lot of people to do in this day and age, but I would say sleep well would be another chapter that I'd add along with sitting down to dinner and some of the other ones that talk about, nurturing.
Cool. Thank you.
Anybody else, Shelley?
Yes, we do. We have Anita, would you like to ask your question or would you like me to read it? Either one.
I'm just very intrigued by all these principles. And I'm trying to like grab a little bit of what some of them are. So is there anything like in general, are there any particular principles that are kind of your favorites or that have really, kind of made the most difference, to you in your life?
There's, well, one of them for sure, raising a family. One of them was sit down to dinner. We actually, as a family, sat down to dinner every night. My husband and I raised 4 kids together and from 3 separate sets of parents. It was a menagerie. And the 2 youngest ones were raised as siblings in the same household, one going back and forth to his father. And we would sit down to dinner every night, even if we went to, they were both athletes, and we'd always come back and have dinner. And maybe an exception to that here or there, but that was really important. And so we limited extracurriculars so that we could have that family time. And that was number one. I think that was probably in hindsight really important. And our kids will tell us that it was important. And the second was about, sleeping well and taking care of oneself. I think one of my favorite essays was, 2 of them, is Pick Weeds. It talks about taking your favorite chore and making magic out of it. For some people, it's folding laundry. For some people, it's doing dishes. Kind of that kind of meditative state that you get in with certain kinds of activities.
Right.
That really is about the mundane. And the third one was about, I call it sitting in every chair. I was on a sabbatical and was talking to somebody, and he asked me what I was going to do. And I said I didn't know. I was going to really take every day, and I didn't plan my schedule at all. I wanted time off. And he talked about moving one day and not having experienced his apartment. And we talked about sitting in every chair. And so I wrote the essay about literally experiencing your home from a different vantage point every day. And I did that during that sabbatical, and I try to do that still to this day.
Right. And it sounds like that's also a metaphor for having an experience and sitting in every chair, or if you're talking about leadership in your company, understanding the people who are sitting in all of those chairs. So it's nice to kind of visualize doing that in your home and that self-care for yourself. But it's also nice to think about that, as a kind of an umbrella.
Yeah. And it's also one of my favorite illustrations in the book. My grandson illustrated the book. It was a collaboration last summer. And that drawing of his, he did many that I just love, but that one was a little mid-century modern chair and everything. He just kind of nailed it with that illustration.
Really sweet.
Well, we have another.
Remember that, Anthea. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
I wanted it because the fact that your grandson did all these illustrations, and when people see the book, it's really, and it's its own magic, frankly. It's so, so great. It would not be the same without it.
It wouldn't.
It's great. Shelley, go ahead. You were going to call on somebody.
I said we have another author among us. Nancy Davis, co-author of the Thank You Project, has a question. Nancy, you're up.
Hey, Anthea, I want to thank you because my day job is in the digital content publishing industry, and I start every morning reading the Outsell newsletter, and it is without fail, that's where I go first because you guys just know exactly what's going on. And when I saw you were speaking, I'm like, I got to thank her because that is really an important part of my day. So that's first and foremost. But as a fellow author, I want to ask you, what's something that surprised you that you learned about yourself in writing the book?
To be graceful with patience, right? This book was in the making for a long, long time. And I remember, I write about it, one of my clients who's a published author, 7-time historian, he writes biographies. And I was kibitzing about not being able to get this book done and blah, 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 blah. And he said, Anthea, you're raising 4 kids, you've got this young company, kind of like go easy with yourself. There'll be a time, there'll be a place. And so for me to be accepting of that was not my DNA, particularly then. And it was when I turned 50 that I was deciding I have to absolutely get this thing done and could find the space, right? My youngest had gone to college. My parents passed away fairly young, but Greg's parents were very much the matriarch and patriarch of the family, and we lost them a couple of years apart. So suddenly this, these responsibilities just kind of opened up, and I could appreciate what this gentleman, Bob Mary, had told me. And so I was more graceful with that comment that he made than I thought I would be, because it was hard for me not to get it done sooner.
Understood.
Yeah, and thank you for the nice comments about the
Well, I'm
newsletter.
looking forward to, I read the newsletter, so now I'm going to read the book. It'll be
There you go.
coverage, full coverage.
And thank you for your book.
Okay. Shelley?
We do have one question about illustrations, seeing the illustrations. If people would like to see them, can they see them on your website? Can you show us some?
Well, they're in the book. I could see if I could get a couple out here that I could, let's see if I can find. Let's see.
Especially the one about sit in every chair, because I love that he chose to do two very modern, beautiful chairs.
See if I can find that one. This is where, well, here's pickweeds. I don't know if you could.
Yes, you can see it. Yeah.
Yes.
He's
Wow.
also, let's see if I can find that one.
And Anthea, he is how old now?
He was 10 when he did the illustrations.
Wow.
And I'm trying to find the one. He did one called Get Dressed. Well, I did the essay called Get Dressed. Here it is. So I don't know if you can see this.
Yeah.
And if you see her up close, she just has all this sass about her. She just has her hand on her hip and she's got all this style. And he kind of captured the essence of getting dressed. I'll try and find a picture of the sitting in every chair, because it is my favorite.
I love it.
He did binoculars, all kinds of things. Goldfish.
He's undoubtedly on his way to Art Center or someplace, because it's unbelievable. His talent is incredible. Yeah.
He did the little hearts that are the segue between each section of the book. So he is an old soul. He was sending his grandfather and I a text today about his new Visconti pen, because he loves ink pens, he loves fountain pens, he knows them. And he was telling us how stunning the color was. And this is a kid that's, now in 11. And he sends us, we're pen pals now. Now that we're all sheltering in place, one of his pastimes is to write letters when he's not in distance learning. And he has been handwriting. He taught himself handwriting. And he posts it, sends us the letters, and then we write back. So he's very much an old soul, has been since the minute he came out of the womb.
Okay, so we need to get him a copy of the Thank You Project.
Yeah.
Because that, he is going to be, oh my God, he's the poster child for this. That's fabulous.
And if I find I'll find it, but do find that. I can't seem to find it. That's the only one that's not showing up right now.
Well, that's another reason for everybody to grab the book. Okay.
Writing letters.
So great.
Yeah, he's
so
a fun
great.
kid. He's great fun.
Yeah. Well, anybody else? Betsy.
Betsy wants him at the salon.
Ah. Okay, there's a great idea.
And he
All
would
right, Anthea, you tell him that he's up in June.
Okay.
Anybody else, Shelley, raising their hand?
No.
Okay. All right. So, Anthea, I would ask you to leave us with, is there, I've heard, I've never authored my own book. I have lots of titles, Sliding into Home, Failing Wire and Chewing Gum. Anyway, but I've heard from authors, and I think, Nancy, I asked you this question since you were our guest speaker at the first salon. Is there something once the book was finished and done and you thought, oh, this is going to have to go in the next book, or wish I'd been able to remember to put that in this book? Is there something that's not in Magic in the Mundane that you would like to add today?
No.
Whether it's another theme, idea, example.
So I have two projects in the works. I feel really complete with this project. There's always new Mundane. I blog all the time, and as I create new stories, I share them. Right now, with COVID-19, we're trying new recipes every night and, you know, just making magic out of the normal routine of dinner. So I think I feel good about this project. The next one I'm working on is a series of love letters that I was blessed to receive when my mother-in-law passed away. And I found 6 to 7 years of letters that my father-in-law wrote her during their courtship and the first years of their marriage during World War II. And the courtship and the early days of their marriage are all written in his words because she kept his letters. He, of course, did not keep hers, traveling all over the place, but it's a beautiful story. So I'm going to transcribe that. I feel like I'm the steward of that lore. It's a wonderful love story. They were married over 64 years, having only met each other twice in person before they married. And most of their courtship was communication through letters. And these letters are really the chronicling of that courtship. So in a marriage that endures. And then I'm thinking about one around relationships really matter to me. You touched on that earlier. And so I'm intrigued. I loved Poe Bronson's book, Why Do I Love These People? And I felt that I want to understand through the lens of couples who have lasted 40 years or longer, what makes their relationship last. And so I'm thinking of doing an anthology of maybe 40 stories of 40 couples and what their lessons are. So that's kind of in the back of my mind.
Fabulous. Well, I want to thank you again, my friend, for joining us to have this discussion and share with everybody the backstory of so many of your essays. And I think Betsy has a great idea of having your grandson. So you must tell him that people are asking for him already. That's how famous he is. And I want to thank everybody for joining us yet again. I hope, and I say this every Monday night, and I will continue to say it, that I hope this is a great way to start your week, whether we're isolating in place or not, that I want this to be, and Shelley and I, in coming up with this whole idea, was to spark ideas, interests, inspiration. Even if one little thing you take away, it's 1 hour out of your week where you start it, and then hopefully that little piece that you learned tonight from Anthea or last week from Rochelle Boucher last and continue to build, because we are connecting all of this by design. So next week, you will hear from Holly Payne, the founder of Booksby. So we're going to continue this author meets the entire industry exploration and how that works for readers specifically. And then other people on this Zoom call tonight are also speakers for the future. So I hope you all stay with us. Tell your friends, keep the momentum going, and know that you'll see a lot of content from us on Mocha Plus and our social channels that are Anthea's posts as well as other speakers. So thank you again. Have a wonderful rest of your week and stay home.
Thank you. Have a
Bye,
good
everybody.
evening.
Thanks for
Bye.
coming.
Thank